Christmas dinner, my son-in-law announced that I would be the helper for the night. They left me standing by the sink with my plate, while the rest of the table laughed. The very next morning, I canceled the loan I had taken for his business. I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end, and tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I want to see how far my story travels. I never imagined my own daughter would allow someone to treat me like this. The scent of roasted turkey and cinnamon filled the air as I pulled into Amy's driveway. The Christmas lights shimmered softly against the evening sky, glowing across the two-story suburban home she and her husband, Peter, had bought last spring. My arms were full, carefully wrapped gifts, and a homemade apple pie, Amy's childhood favorite. I'd stayed up late the night before perfecting it, just like I had every Christmas since she was 5. Some traditions feel sacred, even when life around us changes. As I rang the doorbell, I adjusted my forest green dress, the one I'd treated myself to after finalizing the loan paperwork for Peter's struggling construction company. $300,000 from my retirement savings. It's only temporary, he'd said. You're helping protect 20 jobs, Amber. The door opened. Peter stood there in an expensive suit, holding a champagne flute. His eyes, slightly unfocused, skimmed over me without warmth. Finally, he checked his Rolex and said, "Good. The help has arrived." I forced a polite smile, assuming it was one of his awkward jokes. "Merry Christmas, Peter." The moment I stepped inside, the conversation in the dining room paused. I heard Amy's laugh, once the warmest sound in my world. She appeared, looking beautiful in a red cocktail dress I'd never seen before. She air-kissed me carefully, avoiding her makeup. "You're late," she said. I looked at my watch. "It's 6:55. You said 7. "Everyone else managed to be here at 6:30. Peter cut in. Then he turned to the guests, 4 couples I didn't know, and announced loudly, "Everyone, this is Amy's mother, Amber. She kindly offered to help serve tonight." My smile faded as he reached behind the door and produced a plain white apron. Not the cheerful holiday one from their kitchen, but something from a restaurant back room. "Peter, what is this?" "Oh, Mom, relax," Amy said, her words a little loose from champagne. "It's just holiday fun. We told everyone we hired help, but then I said, why hire someone when my mom loves taking care of people?" Some guests chuckled, others looked uneasy. Peter handed me the apron. "Kitchen's that way. Turkey needs carving. Potatoes need mashing. Let's move." I looked at Amy, hoping she'd defend me. She just smiled at her guests and rolled her eyes, as if I were being dramatic. "I brought presents," I said softly, still holding the bags and the pie. "Just put them with the others," Amy replied, already turning away. "And please hurry. Everyone's hungry." The next 2 hours blurred into quiet embarrassment. I carved a turkey Peter had only reheated. It had been ordered fully prepared from an upscale caterer. I mashed pre-made gourmet potatoes. I poured wine for guests who didn't even meet my eyes. "Everyone likes gravy on the side," Amy announced loudly, as if I'd never prepared a holiday dinner before she was born. When I finished serving, Peter finally said, "Oh, Amber, you can make yourself a plate. Just eat in the kitchen so you can keep an eye on things." So I stood by the sink, eating cold turkey while laughter echoed from the dining room. Through the doorway, I saw them raise their glasses. "To family," Peter said, his arm around Amy. "To the ones who matter." More laughter, more champagne. I set my half-eaten plate down. Then a voice behind me said gently, "Would you like some water with that?" An older gentleman handed me a glass. His expression held something no one else in that room had shown me that night, simple kindness. "Thank you," I said. "I'm Amber." "I know," he replied. "I'm Richard, Peter's new investor, and I have to say, I don't like how they're treating you." Before I could respond, Peter appeared in the doorway. "Richard, we're starting charades. Amber's fine here. That's what mothers do. They take care of everything." Richard gave me an apologetic look before returning to the others. A single tear slipped down my cheek. 57 years old, a full career behind me, a lifetime spent giving everything to my daughter. And somehow, I had become background. The worst part wasn't the apron or eating alone. It was seeing Amy, my own daughter, laughing while I was pushed aside. As I loaded their expensive china into the dishwasher, my hands trembled with exhaustion and something deeper. Whether it was anger, resolve, or something in between, one thing became clear. I had reached my limit. Tomorrow, I would call the bank, and ending Peter's loan would only be the first step in something neither he nor Amy ever imagined. That night, I barely slept. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw Amy laughing as Peter handed me that apron. The memory cut deeper than anything physical ever had. Morning arrived with a faint winter light slipping through my curtains. I made coffee on autopilot, replaying the Christmas dinner like a scene I couldn't escape. My phone rang twice. Amy. I let both calls go to voicemail. I wasn't ready for excuses. Instead, I called the bank. Then I dialed my lawyer, Harold, the one who had helped me manage everything after Thomas passed 8 years ago. Amber, Merry Christmas. Is everything okay? His familiar voice held concern. I need to cancel a loan, I said, skipping any polite introduction. The one for Peter's company. The construction loan? Amber, that was finalized 2 weeks ago. $300,000 is... I know exactly how much it is, I cut in, surprising even myself with the steadiness of my tone. Can we reverse it? Harold paused. There's a 48-hour rescission clause in most of your contracts. Let me check. Yes, you're still within the window, but Amber... What happened? I couldn't bring myself to describe the humiliation in detail. Let's just say I've seen enough. The loan was a mistake. After the call ended, I sat at my kitchen table, staring into my untouched coffee. The house felt overwhelmingly quiet. On instinct, I opened my laptop and checked my online banking, and my heart dropped. There were 3 withdrawals to Peter's company within the past week, $300,000, the loan I had approved, plus $50,000, plus another $25,000 I had never authorized those 2 additional transfers. My hands shook as I called Harold again. There's something else, I said, explaining the extra withdrawals. That's unauthorized access, Harold said, his tone suddenly serious. He must have gotten into your account somehow. Did you ever share your login or sign anything new? No, but... A memory surfaced. He helped me set up a new online banking profile last month, said my old one wasn't secure. That's it, Harold confirmed. I'm contacting the bank's fraud team right now. Everything will be frozen. I thanked him and ended the call, feeling a strange, focused calm settle over me. Then the doorbell rang. Rose, my neighbor for 15 years, stood on my porch with a plate of Christmas cookies and worry etched across her face. You didn't answer my texts, she said as she stepped inside. How was dinner at Amy's? I hadn't intended to tell anyone, but as soon as she sat at my kitchen table, everything spilled out. The apron, serving all night, standing by the sink while the rest of them laughed. That... Rose started, but she didn't finish. The expression on her face said enough. And Amy just let it happen, I whispered. She encouraged it. My voice cracked. She's changed so much since marrying him. Sometimes I hardly recognize her. Rose reached across the table and took my hand. This isn't the first time, is it? Her question unlocked something that had been building inside me for months. No, I admitted. It started with small comments after they got engaged, little jokes at my expense. Then he began questioning my financial choices, offering to help manage things after Thomas died. Piece by piece, I realized how Peter had inserted himself into my financial life, first with concerns, then suggestions, always framed as looking out for the family. And did you know, I continued, they remodeled their kitchen last month. New range, custom cabinets, marble counters, the whole thing. Rose's eyes widened. But he told you the business was struggling. Yes, he said layoffs were coming if I didn't help. I swallowed. And this morning I checked Amy's social media. She posted photos of a new boat 2 days ago. A boat? Rose echoed. A 30-foot cabin cruiser, I said quietly. Apparently they're planning a New Year's coastal trip. Rose shook her head slowly. With your money. Yes, money I'd saved for 25 years. Money meant to carry me through retirement. Money that should have someday been Amy's inheritance. What will you do now? Rose asked softly. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A message from Harold. Access revoked. Unauthorized transfers flagged. Call me. I showed Rose the text, and for the first time since the night before, I felt a spark of strength return. I'm taking back control, I said, starting with my finances, but it won't end there. Rose gave a firm nod. It's about time. As if on cue, my phone rang again. Amy's name lit up the screen. This time I answered. Mom, she said, her voice anxious. What's going on? Peter just got calls from the bank. Bree, I canceled the loan, I said, my voice steady, and reported the unauthorized withdrawals. What? You can't do that. Peter's business needs that money. Does his business also need a new boat? I asked quietly. Silence. Then suddenly, that's different. It's a business investment, for client entertainment. And the kitchen remodel, I added evenly. Was that also for client entertainment? I don't understand why you're acting like this, Amy said, her tone sharpening. After everything we've done for you? And what exactly is that, Amy? My question wasn't filled with anger, just honest curiosity. Let's see. You had me serve your dinner guests. You let people mock me and my own family. You've treated me like your personal source of money. That's not fair, she snapped. It was just a joke last night. If you can't handle a little teasing— It wasn't teasing, I said softly. It was unkind, and it showed me exactly how you and Peter see me. Amy's voice shifted into something fragile, a tone she'd used since childhood whenever she didn't want to acknowledge her actions. Mom, please. Peter says if the loan doesn't go through, people will lose their jobs. Is that really what you want? To let others suffer because you're being sensitive? For a moment, I almost hesitated. Almost. But then I remembered standing alone by the sink with cold turkey on my plate while my daughter laughed. I'll make you an offer, I said, my voice settling into a calm certainty. Have Peter show me the payroll records, show me the business accounts. If this money is truly for the company, then we can discuss it. That's private business information. He doesn't owe you anything, Amy insisted. Then I don't owe him anything either, I said simply. The loan is gone, Amy. I ended the call before she could respond. My pulse raced, but for the first time in months, my thoughts were clear. Good for you, Rose said softly from across the table. My phone rang again, Peter this time. I turned it off and set it aside. They'll come here next, I told Rose, when they realize I'm not changing my mind. Rose gave a small, approving smile. Then we'd better be ready, shouldn't we? She was right. Not even an hour passed before I heard the sudden screech of tires outside. Rose and I exchanged a knowing look over our coffee mugs. Want me to stay? She asked. I shook my head. I need to handle this myself. She squeezed my hand, gathered her purse, and slipped out the back door just as the doorbell began ringing nonstop. Amy or Peter, whoever it was, they weren't giving up. I walked to the door slowly, steadying my breathing. I smoothed my sweater and opened it. They both stood there. Peter's face was flushed with frustration, while Amy looked torn between worry and embarrassment. What exactly do you think you're doing? Peter demanded. Before I could reply, he tried to step inside. I blocked him. I don't recall inviting you in. Amy's eyes widened. She'd never heard me use that voice. Mom, please, she whispered urgently. The neighbors— Like you cared about my dignity last night? I replied calmly. Fine, you can come in. Let's talk like adults. Peter strode into my living room, pacing back and forth. You had no right to cancel that loan. We have obligations, suppliers, payroll. I sat down in Thomas's old armchair, the only piece of furniture I'd never been able to replace after he passed. It had always given me a sense of grounding. Interesting you mentioned contracts, I said. Because I've reviewed mine with your company. The funds were designated for supplier payments and employee wages, not personal purchases. What personal purchases? Amy asked, genuinely confused. The boat, Amy, I said gently. The kitchen remodel, the weekend getaways. You posted them online. Peter waved a hand dismissively. They're part of the business. Client engagement. Oh? I raised an eyebrow. In that case, you won't mind showing me the business documents where those expenses are categorized as such. I'm sure the proper authorities would find it interesting, too. Peter's face deepened in color. You think you're clever? You're just... Amy gasped. Peter! I remained calm. Is that truly how you see me, Amy? As someone who doesn't want your happiness? She shifted uncomfortably. No. But Mom, you don't understand the pressure we're under. The business is struggling. We needed that loan. Then why the boat? I asked softly. Why the renovations? Because appearances matter, Peter snapped. No one hires a contractor who looks unsuccessful. I understand appearances, I responded. Like how it looked last night. Your mother-in-law serving guests while eating alone by the sink. Amy's expression finally softened with guilt. It was a terrible joke. We'd had a few drinks. It didn't feel like a joke, I interrupted gently, and it revealed something important. You don't value me. Not for who I am, only for what I can give. Peter scoffed. Stop exaggerating. I'm not, I said quietly. I'm making a decision. If the only thing you value about me is my money, then I'm removing that from our relationship. Amy's eyes widened. What does that even mean? It means the loan is canceled. The unauthorized withdrawals are under investigation. And from this moment on, there will be no further financial support from me. You can't do this, Peter said sharply. Do you have any idea? He stepped forward, and for a moment, the tension in the room thickened. I kept my voice calm. Are you implying something in my own home, Peter? Amy quickly stepped between us. No one is implying anything, she said, her voice shaking. Mom, please, we can talk this through, Amy insisted. I know last night went too far, but cutting us off financially is extreme. Is it? I met her gaze directly. Tell me honestly, Amy. If I didn't have any money, if I were struggling to pay my own bills, would you and Peter still make time for me? Would I be welcomed at your table as family, or simply tolerated as someone who helps? Amy opened her mouth, then slowly closed it again. Her silence was clearer than any answer she could have spoken. That's what I thought, I said quietly. Peter grabbed her by the arm. This is ridiculous. We're leaving. When you come to your senses, call us. I stood as they turned to go. Before you leave, I have something for you. I walked to my desk, retrieved an envelope, and handed it to Amy. What is this? She asked. Documentation, I said calmly. The receipt for your wedding, the down payment on your first home, the startup funds for Peter's business, every dollar I've contributed over the past 5 years. My tone stayed even. I never kept track until now, because that's not what a parent does. But since our relationship has become transactional, I thought you should have an accurate record. Amy flipped through the pages, her face growing pale. Mom, I never what? I asked gently. Never realized how much I gave, or never thought the giving would stop? Peter snatched the envelope, tossed it onto my coffee table, and said sharply, Keep your paperwork and your guilt trips. We don't need your money. I offered a small, calm smile. I'm glad to hear that, because you don't have access to it anymore. When they left, Peter closing the door hard enough that the windows shivered, I lowered myself back into Thomas's armchair. Emotionally drained, but somehow lighter. For the first time in a long time, I had stood firmly on my own 2 feet. A message chimed on my phone. It was from Rose. All clear? Yes, I typed back. They're gone. Her reply came almost immediately. For now. But this isn't over. She was right. This wasn't only about money. It was about patterns, dependency, and control. By refusing to play my usual role, I'd changed a dynamic they relied on, and they wouldn't let go easily. As I made myself tea, my hands trembled not from fear, but from something closer to adrenaline. For years, I'd allowed my love for Amy to outweigh my own boundaries. I'd become a quiet participant in my own diminishing. Not anymore. Whatever came next, I would approach it on my terms. I glanced at the family photo on the mantel, Amy's college graduation. The three of us smiling, Thomas, me, and our bright, hopeful daughter. That version of us no longer existed, reshaped by time, choices, and realities none of us anticipated. But perhaps from all this, something new could eventually grow, something rooted in mutual respect rather than financial dependence. If Amy could understand that someday, I would welcome it. And if she couldn't, then I would learn to live with that truth too. The next week drifted by strangely, calm on the surface, but edged with uncertainty. Each day my phone stayed silent. I felt a mix of relief and a quiet ache. The house seemed quieter, as if echoing the absence of Amy's constant messages asking for advice, support, or help. On Friday, Harold called with an update. "The bank has frozen the unauthorized transfers," he said. "They're preparing a case, but they need to know if you want to move forward legally." The question felt heavy. Legally? You mean charges? "Unauthorized access is a violation," Harold said gently. "What Peter did, accessing your accounts without permission, is not allowed." I closed my eyes for a moment, picturing Amy's face if her husband faced serious consequences. Even through all the pain, I couldn't do that to her. "No charges," I decided quietly, "but I want the funds returned." Harold exhaled slowly. "Without legal action, recovery might be challenging. They could claim you approved it verbally." "Then we'll approach it differently," I said, a plan forming in my mind. "Can you draft a formal letter addressing the unauthorized withdrawals and requesting repayment? Include that we're willing to discuss a payment plan instead of pursuing anything else." "I can do that," he said. "But Amber, people who behave like this rarely respond to reasonable offers." "Maybe not," I said softly, "but this gives them one chance to make things right." After the call, I wandered through the house, feeling unsettled. Every corner reminded me of Amy, her childhood pictures, the chip in the coffee table she made during a school project, the pencil marks on the doorframe where I measured her height every birthday. My life had been shaped around being her mother. Even after she grew up, moved out, and married, I'd stayed centered around her wants and needs. Who was I without that role? The question lingered as I pulled out old photo albums. There I was before Amy. Younger, confident, smiling in front of the small accounting firm where I'd climbed from receptionist to partner. There were photos of Thomas and me during our honeymoon, hiking with backpacks through national parks, full of adventure. When had I lost that younger version of myself? When had I stopped being Amber and become only Amy's mother? The doorbell pulled me from my thoughts. For one hopeful second, I imagined it might be Amy coming to apologize, ready to talk. But instead, I found Rose on my porch holding a bottle of wine and a sympathy card. "I know it's not a loss in the traditional sense," she said as I let her in, "but it is a loss, and it deserves to be acknowledged." Her honesty made my eyes sting. We settled into the living room, sipping wine from mismatched mugs. I couldn't bring myself to use the crystal glasses Amy had given me last Christmas. Not today. "Have you heard from her?" Rose asked. I shook my head. "Not a word. Harold is sending a letter about the unauthorized withdrawals. But I'm not pressing charges." Rose's brows rose sharply. "Why not?" "What happened was wrong." "Because taking legal action would destroy any chance of repairing things with Amy," I said. "I'm upset. But I'm not trying to hurt her." Rose swirled the wine in her cup. "And if they ignore the letter? If they keep the money? Then I'll have to accept that loss, too." I exhaled. "But I'm hoping it won't come to that." Rose studied me gently. "And what about you? What are you going to do now?" The question felt enormous. What was I going to do? I was 57, financially stable if I was careful. But suddenly, without the purpose I'd carried for decades. I don't know, I admitted. I've spent so many years defining myself through Amy's needs that I'm not sure who I am outside of that. Rose topped off our mugs. Then maybe it's time to find out. Later that night, after she left, I sat at my neglected desk and pulled out a notepad. At the top, I wrote, "Who is Amber without Amy?" The blank page stared back at me, challenging me. I tried to remember the dreams I'd had before motherhood had filled every corner of my life. Travel, learning, connection, adventure. Slowly at first, then with increasing confidence, I began to write. Places I wanted to visit, skills I wanted to learn, people I wanted to reconnect with, books that had sat untouched for years. By midnight, I had filled 3 full pages. Nothing extreme, no climbing mountains or crossing oceans alone, but the ideas belonged to me. Dreams that didn't rely on being someone's mother. Dreams that didn't require Amy's approval. The next morning, clarity washed over me like sunlight. While drinking coffee, I made 2 phone calls that quietly shifted the direction of my life. The first was to the community college where I'd once taken evening classes. "Yes, I'd like to register for the spring photography course," I said, "and the watercolor workshop as well." The second call was to a travel agent. "I'm interested in the summer group tour to the national parks," I said. "Yes. Just for one." By the time I hung up, a flutter of excitement moved through me. I looked around my living room with new eyes. The furniture arranged exactly as it had been when Thomas was alive. The walls covered with Amy's milestones, shelves filled with objects I'd kept out of habit rather than joy. This was a room designed for the past, not for the future. I spent the day rearranging furniture, taking down a few photos, and making a donation pile of items that no longer felt meaningful. With every shift and every cleared shelf, I felt lighter, more myself. Around 3, the doorbell rang again. It was a courier with an envelope from Harold. Inside was a copy of the letter he'd sent to Peter and Amy, a professional, clear request for the return of the unauthorized funds. Firm, but respectful. It left no ambiguity. I read it twice and placed it in my desk drawer. The choice was now theirs. They could try to repair the damage, or they could allow the distance between us to grow. Either way, I would be okay. Not because I didn't love Amy, I always would, but because I was reclaiming the parts of myself that had been neglected for far too long. That evening, as I sat on my newly rearranged couch reading a book I'd postponed for years, my phone lit up. A text from Amy. "We need to talk. Can I come by tomorrow?" Simple. Direct. No apologies, no accusations. I typed several drafts before settling on one equally simple, "Yes, 10 a.m. Come alone." Her reply came instantly. "I will." I set my phone aside, my heartbeat quickening. Tomorrow would decide whether we still had a bridge to rebuild or whether the distance would remain. I wasn't expecting miracles, but maybe, just maybe, there was hope for understanding. Whatever happened next, I would face it as the woman I was rediscovering, not just Amy's mother, but Amber, a woman with her own identity, her own boundaries, her own future. That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in weeks. At exactly 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. I had been awake since dawn, alternating between straightening the house and rehearsing conversations in my mind. By the time the clock struck 10, I felt both prepared and completely unprepared. Taking a steadying breath, I opened the door. Amy stood on the porch, and she looked nothing like the polished, confident woman from Christmas night. Her hair was pulled into a messy ponytail, her face bare, shadows under her eyes. She wore jeans and an old college sweatshirt, clothes I hadn't seen on her in years. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. I stepped aside. "Hello, Amy." We moved into the living room, and she immediately took in the changes. The rearranged furniture, the empty spaces where some photos had been, the spots where Thomas's old collections once crowded the shelves. "You've been redecorating," she said, genuinely surprised. "Just making a few overdue changes," I replied, gesturing to the couch. "Coffee?" She nodded, and I was grateful for the small pause as I went to the kitchen. When I returned with 2 mugs, Amy was studying the travel brochures scattered across the coffee table. "National parks?" she asked, accepting her mug. "Since when are you interested in camping?" "Since always," I answered. "Your father and I used to hike and camp before you were born. I'm thinking of revisiting some of those places this summer." "Alone?" she asked. "With a tour group," I clarified, smiling a little. "A seniors group." Amy set down her mug, her expression shifting. "Mom, about Christmas." I sat opposite her, keeping my face calm. "Yes," I said. "Let's talk about it." "It got out of hand," she began. "We were drinking, and Peter thought it would be funny. Everyone was laughing, and you joined in," I finished gently. She lowered her eyes. "Yes, I'm sorry." The apology floated between us, honest, but incomplete. "Why?" I asked quietly. "Why did you think making fun of me would be funny?" Amy flinched. "I didn't think of it as that. I just what?" I asked. She struggled for the words. "Peter said it would be a good joke, and I wanted his friends to like me. They're all so successful and confident, and I always feel like they're judging me. Like he married beneath them." Her confession surprised me. "So you tried to raise yourself up by pushing me down," I said calmly. Amy's eyes filled with tears. "When you say it that way, it sounds terrible." "It was painful," I said, my voice gentle but unwavering. "I spent Christmas night standing alone, eating cold food by the sink while my daughter laughed at me. Do you understand how that felt?" A tear slid down her cheek. "I didn't think about how you'd feel," she whispered. "I just wanted to fit into Peter's world." I nodded slowly. "I understand wanting to belong," I said. "But at what cost, Amy?" She swallowed hard. "I've grown up," she protested weakly. "You've started treating people based on how useful they are to you," I said quietly. "That's not growth." Amy wiped her cheeks, trying to hold herself together. "I got the letter from your lawyer," she said. "About the money." "Yes," I said. "There were withdrawals from my account that I didn't authorize." Amy hesitated. "Peter says you gave him permission to manage your investments." "I did not," I replied firmly. "And I think you know that." Her silence spoke for her. She stared down at her coffee. "He's upset," she whispered. "He says you're trying to ruin us by demanding the money back." "The timing," she added quietly. "The business is struggling. The loan was supposed to help until a payment comes in next month." I sighed. "Amy, I've seen the photos you posted. The boat, the kitchen remodel, the trips. That doesn't look like a struggling business." She looked down, embarrassed. "The boat was used," she said softly. "And the kitchen. Peter says we have to show success to get clients. That appearances matter. And the loan." I asked, was it for the business or for the appearance of success? Amy didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. Some of both, I think. The honesty cost her. I could see it. A thought settled heavily in my mind. "Amy, does Peter let you see the business accounts?" Her eyes flicked up to mine, then away. "Not really," she whispered. "He says I wouldn't understand. He gives me a household budget and that's it." My heart ached. "And if you need anything beyond that, you have to ask?" I said softly. Amy nodded, shame coloring her cheeks. "He says it's better if one person manages the money," she said. "That separate accounts cause conflict." I kept my expression steady, though inside, a knot of worry tightened. "Amy," I said gently, "that's not partnership. That's control." "It's just how we do things," she insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. "And how is that working for you?" I asked gently. "Are you happy?" The question startled her. I don't know. When things are good, they're really good. But lately... Lately what?" I pressed softly. She shook her head. It doesn't matter. What matters is fixing the issue with the money. Peter wants me to convince you to let it go. He keeps saying family should stay united. Interesting, I said quietly. He believes family should stay united when he needs financial support, but not when it comes to showing basic respect. Amy winced. Mom, please. He's very stressed. He barely sleeps. He keeps checking his phone, waiting for updates. I studied her face. The worry lines, the exhaustion, the tense way she held her shoulders. This wasn't just about finances. Something deeper was happening. Amy, I said carefully, is Peter in some kind of trouble? The fear in her eyes told me more than words. No. I mean, just normal business stress, she said quickly, but her hands shook as she set down her coffee. Are you in danger? I asked quietly. Has he ever hurt you? No, she said immediately, and the denial sounded sincere. But there might be some people he owes money to, people who aren't as patient as you. A cold wave passed through me. What kind of people? Amy stood abruptly. I shouldn't have said that. I have to go. I rose with her, reaching for her hand. Amy, wait. Whatever is happening, we can face it together. But I need the truth. She hesitated at the door, torn between loyalty to her husband and her own fear. I don't know everything, she whispered at last, but I think some of the investments Peter made weren't legitimate, and now people want their returns. My mind raced. What had Peter gotten himself, and my daughter, involved in? Stay here tonight, I said instantly. You don't have to go back until we figure this out. I can't, she whispered. He'll know I talked to you. He expects me to come home with good news about the money. And if you don't? I asked quietly. Her silence was the answer. Give me 1 day, I said. Don't tell him anything yet. Let me make some calls. Amy nodded slowly. Okay, 1 day. But Mom, be careful. Some of these people... She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Whatever Peter was tangled in, it wasn't harmless. After she left, I sat in my newly arranged living room, my thoughts spinning. This wasn't just about money anymore. My daughter might be genuinely unsafe. I picked up my phone and called Harold. I need you to look into something immediately, I said. Peter's business. I think something's very wrong. What kind of wrong? Harold asked, concern sharpening his voice. I don't know, I admitted. But Amy is frightened, and that alarms me. I'll see what I can uncover, he promised. In the meantime, be careful. If your son-in-law is involved in questionable activities, you don't want to get pulled into it. But I already was. Amy was my daughter, and no matter how badly things had gone, I couldn't turn my back on her. Could I help her without losing myself in the process? By evening, Harold called back, and his tone told me everything before he even spoke. Amber, it's a mess, he said. He explained. Peter had taken deposits for projects he never started, borrowed against properties he did not own, gone months without paying subcontractors, had multiple lawsuits pending, and worst of all, there were rumors linking him to a local lender with a reputation for aggressive collection. It's a house of cards, Harold said, and it's close to collapsing. What about Amy? I asked, dread tightening in my stomach. She's not listed on the business documents, he said, but if she signed anything recently... I imagined Amy's trembling hands, her frightened eyes. What do I do? I whispered. Legally? Stay out of it, Harold said, but as her mother... He paused. That's a different question. After we hung up, I sat in the dark, weighing everything. I could walk away, protect myself, let Amy deal with the fallout of her choices and Peter's decisions. Part of me, the part still aching from Christmas night, whispered that she had brought this on herself. But another, stronger part knew, love doesn't vanish just because someone fails you. Love doesn't keep score. At 9:30 p.m., my phone rang. Amy's name lit up the screen. Mom, her voice trembled. Can you come get me, please? I was in my car before she finished. Peter had received a visit from people demanding payment. There had been shouting, chaos. Then he grabbed his keys and disappeared, leaving Amy alone with instructions to pack essentials. When I pulled into their driveway 20 minutes later, Amy sat on the front steps with a small suitcase, looking lost and heartbreakingly young. "I didn't know who else to call," she said as she climbed into the car. "You called the right person," I said, taking her cold hand before pulling away. The drive home was silent. Amy stared out the window, her phone silent. Peter hadn't called. When we arrived, I led her to her old bedroom, now my craft room, but still with a daybed. She sat on the edge, taking in the walls decorated with my watercolor attempts instead of her childhood posters. "You've really changed things," she said softly. "I've been rediscovering parts of myself," I said, "and finding new ones." Her gaze landed on a watercolor of the lake we used to visit every summer. "I remember that place," she whispered. "Dad used to take me fishing at sunrise." "You always hated getting up that early," I said with a small smile. "But I loved being out on the water with him," she said quietly. "Just us." It felt peaceful. The memory hung between us, tender and bittersweet. "Mom," her voice wavered, "I've made such a mess of everything." "We all make mistakes," I said gently. "No," she whispered, "this is more than a mistake. I let Peter distance me from you. I let him influence everything, our money, my time, even how I acted around his friends." Her voice cracked. I became someone I don't recognize, someone who could laugh while her mother was being embarrassed. Her honesty cut through me. "Why?" I asked softly. "Why did you stay when things started changing?" I asked softly. Amy wiped her tears, gathering herself. "At first, it all felt exciting," she admitted. "Peter was charming, confident, everything I thought I wanted. But little by little, he began criticizing things. My friends weren't refined enough. My job wasn't impressive enough. My clothes weren't the right style." She drew a shaky breath. "By the time I realized what was happening, I felt trapped. He controlled all our finances. My name wasn't on anything except shared debt, and I was embarrassed that I'd made such a terrible mistake." I wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Oh, Amy," she continued, her voice breaking. "And the worst part? The way he talked about you, always making small jokes at your expense, always testing whether I'd defend you or join in. And I failed that test. I failed you." Her sobs cut straight through me. A grown woman, yet still, in so many ways, my little girl. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she managed between tears. "For Christmas, for everything." "I know," I said gently, stroking her hair. "I know you are." When her tears slowed, I brought her a glass of water and sat beside her again. "Amy, I need to ask something important. Did you know about Peter's business practices? The false contracts? The money issues?" She shook her head. "Not at first. I knew things weren't great, but he always had an explanation. Only in the past few months did I start finding paperwork, overhearing calls. I confronted him once and he—" She swallowed hard. "He didn't touch me. But he threw a glass at the wall. I was scared to ask anything after that." Relief washed over me. She wasn't part of his actions. She had been caught in his web like everyone else. "We'll figure this out," I promised. "For tonight, just rest." As I stood to leave, she caught my hand. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered. "After how I treated you. I wouldn't blame you if you turned me away." I gave her a sad smile. "Because I'm your mother. That doesn't disappear, even when things get complicated." The next morning, we called Harold. The news wasn't good. Police were actively searching for Peter. His car had been found abandoned near the state line. Several investors had come forward, and the district attorney was preparing charges. "What about Amy?" I asked while she showered. "She needs to tell the truth and cooperate fully," Harold said. "She might lose any assets tied to Peter, but she shouldn't face charges unless she knowingly participated." When Amy returned, I repeated the advice. She nodded, tired but determined. "I'll talk to the investigators," she said. "I'll tell them everything." The months that followed were hard. Amy was questioned repeatedly, but eventually cleared of involvement. Peter remained missing, though authorities had tracked him as far as Mexico. The house was foreclosed on, the boat seized, and Amy's credit destroyed from debts taken out in both their names. She moved into my spare room while she rebuilt her life. At first, I worried. Would old patterns return? Would she rely on me too much? Would I fall into the role of fixer again? But something in us had shifted. Christmas night had broken us, and from that breaking came the chance to rebuild with honesty instead of expectations. Amy found a steady job at a real estate office. She insisted on paying rent, and I quietly tucked the money aside in a savings account for her. In the evenings, she sometimes joined my painting class or helped plan my summer trip to the national parks. We talked, truly talked, about the things we'd avoided for years. Her childhood pressure, my loneliness after Thomas passed, the unrealistic standards we both tried to live up to. Slowly, carefully, we created a new kind of relationship, one built on mutual respect instead of financial strings. One warm evening in late spring, as we sat watching the sunset from the porch, Amy spoke. "I've been approved for an apartment," she said quietly. "It's small, but safe, and close to work." A mix of pride, sadness, and relief washed over me. "That's wonderful," I said honestly. "When do you move?" "Next weekend," she said. "But I was thinking, maybe we can have dinner together on Sundays. Not every week if you're busy, but regularly?" The simple invitation meant more than she knew. "I'd like that very much," I said, smiling. As summer approached, I prepared for my national parks tour, 2 weeks exploring the places I had dreamed of revisiting for decades. Amy helped me pick out hiking boots and a good camera. The night before my departure, she surprised me with a small farewell dinner. Simple, heartfelt, just the two of us. She cooked her father's favorite pasta dish from the recipe I had taught her years ago. After dinner, she handed me a small, wrapped package. Inside was a leather-bound journal with my name embossed on the cover. "For your trip," she said shyly. "I thought you might want to write things down." I traced my fingers over the soft leather, deeply touched. "There's something else," Amy said, her tone turning serious. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a check. "This is my first payment toward what Peter took." I stared at the modest amount, significant given her new income. "Amy, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do," she said gently. "It might take a long time, but I'm going to repay every cent. Not because you demand it, but because it's the right thing." I looked at her. This strong, resilient woman who had lost everything yet was rebuilding herself with grace and dignity. "I'm proud of you," I said, meaning every word. Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm trying to become someone I can be proud of, too." As we cleared the table together, I realized something profound. The painful Christmas night had given us both an unexpected gift, the chance to stop repeating old patterns and rebuild our relationship with honesty and love instead of obligation and financial pressure. I would never again be the woman standing by the sink, eating cold turkey alone, pretending it didn't hurt. And Amy would never again be someone who valued appearances over authenticity. We had both served time in roles that diminished us. Now we were finding our way to something healthier, something real, and that was worth more than any inheritance I could ever leave her.